All right, so now we're going to talk about your wrong answer journal. For those of you that are taking the online course, you can find your wrong answer journal under your wrong answer journal and just click on this document. There's been a copy created for each student. If you click on it, your own document will come up and it will look like this. I'm going to go ahead and walk us through how we want to use our wrong answer journal. You can go ahead and just type right on here. That's totally fine. This has created a new document for each person, so this is yours. You want to use the same wrong answer journal for every assignment and just keep copying and pasting the questions and putting it down. I know that this looks super intense, but it's this review process that it is going to help you maximize your studying. The goal of these questions is not just to be busy work, but to really help you think through what you need, the thought process you need to properly review a question. I wasted a lot of time when I was studying, thinking I was reviewing because I was just reading online other resources, but I was never actually thinking for myself. And so every time you complete a LR section or you complete some LR drilling questions, a homework assignment, you want to go to your wrong answer journal and fill this out. You want to fill this out before you use external resources. So the questions are as followed. So the first one is just like what the assignment and question number is, or the PT test and what section it is and what question it is. I happen to know that this is from the LRBT2 document. It's a weekend question, and it is number 35, I believe. What is the question type? So going back to what our question types are, you can see that on the study guide or on a different piece of paper, but I know that this is a weekend question. Is this top down or bottom up? Weekend questions are bottom up, so I know I tend to want a stronger answer. If you're confused on what this means, there is a video called Top Down Bottom Up that you can go ahead and see what question types are which. So now that we have that filled out, we're really going to get into the nitty gritty here. So question number 4 says, did you understand the stimulus? If not, try translating it into your own words. This is imperative for us to get better, become better readers, and even eventually faster on the test, is being able to break these arguments down sentence by sentence. And so for this one, I'm going to go sentence by say like, oh, I took the test and I really didn't know what it was saying, or I really struggled, or it took a long time. I'm actually going to type what this means in my own words. So, so this first sentence I'm going to say, so maybe I'm going to go ahead and type this and then play the video. All right, so I just wrote the stimulus in my own words. So this first part where it says, when a stone is trimmed by a mason and exposed to elements, a coating of clay and other minerals called rock varnish gradually accumulates on the freshly trimmed surface. So in my own words, I said that that is when a stone gets trimmed down, it gets exposed to clay and minerals, and that's what we call rock varnish. And then the rock varnish starts to grow on the surface. All right, so then back to our stimulus, sentence number 2 says, organic matter trapped beneath the varnish on stones of an Indian monument was found to be over 1,000 years old. So I just put this in my own words of like, hey, they determined that the organic matter trapped under the stone varnish of the A monument, I just called Indian, the A monument was over 1,000 years old. Cool. And then the last sentence just says, since the organic matter must have grown on the stone shortly after it was trimmed, it follows that the monument was built long before the arrival of the Europeans in the Americas in 1940 or 1492. And so in my sentence, for that one, I just said, because the organic matter grew after the stone was trimmed down, the monument was built long before 1492. And then this last sentence, we want to make sure that we know what was my conclusion. And this part here is my conclusion. All right, so now question number 5 says, did you understand the answer choices? If not, try translating them into your own words. So oftentimes people say, I don't even really know what the answer choices were saying. And so if this is you, go ahead and say which ones they were and put these into your own words too. So for example, if I didn't understand what A said, I would just put A, rock varnish itself contains some organic matter. So for that, I would say rock varnish has at least a little organic matter. Or for B, I would say So it was common for Andes to reuse ancient trim stones. And I'm not going to put before and after 1942 because that's just all the time then. C would be the A monument looks similar to monuments found in old places in Western Asia. And then I'm going to go ahead and do E. So it says rock vanish forms slowly. So rock vanish grows slowly. If at all, on trimmed stones that are stored in a dry. So I'm going to say rock varnish grows slowly, if at all, on trim stones that are kept in a dry, secluded place or something like that. All right, cool. And so that's me going through the answer choices. This is really common for flaw questions or for like method statement, method reasoning, where we really want to break down those answer choices and be like, okay, are there abstract concepts in my answer choices that I can fill in with things like in the stimulus? So if there's an answer choice that says it takes a sufficient condition as for a necessary condition, let's go into the answer or into the stimulus and see if we can find what would be the sufficient condition. What is the necessary condition? What does that mean in common sense words? So that's how we're going to do question number 5. All right, so question number 6 is saying, was the argument flawed? If so, what was the flaw, or what did the argument take for granted, or what did the argument assume? And how would you prove that argument wrong, or how would you expose it? So here, this is a weakened question. So in the italics here, I have said that question types other than flaw questions do have flaws in the argument too. And strengthen and weaken are especially questions that have flaws in them, because if they were a valid argument, then why would we be strengthening it? Or how can you weaken a valid argument? But here, I'm going to go back to what I said was my conclusion. And my conclusion was that the monument was built long before the arrival of Europeans in the Americas in 1492. And then my premises for that or my reasoning for saying that was because the organic matter must have grown on the stone shortly after it was trimmed. So I want to know, like, is it 100% certain that the monument was built long before the arrival of Europeans in the Americas? And I'm going to say, like, yes, this argument is flawed. So I'm going to say it's flawed. And then what kind of flaw or what do I think is going on here? If you don't have all the flaws memorized, that's totally fine. But I'm going to say that it's flawed. And the argument assumes, so for me, I'm going to say that the argument assumes that the stone was trimmed down before the monument was built. So they're assuming that they didn't trim, that the stone was trimmed down after the monument was built. And so how I would destroy, and then I want to think about how would I prove that argument wrong? Like what would happen if the monument was built, like the stone was trimmed down 2,000 years ago, but then they took that stone and used it later to build the monument, but the organic matter was already forming. And so other things here you might say like, oh, they're confusing sufficient for necessary. Or if it's a strengthen or weaken question or a flaw question and it's a correlation causation, you want to point out like, hey, just because two things are correlated, that doesn't mean one is causing the other. There are going to be some questions that do not have flaws in them, potentially like a main conclusion or a parallel reasoning. But if there is a flaw and you notice it, you really do want to try to make note of that here. All right, so then for question number 7, it's asking, did you predict your answer and what was your prediction? If you didn't predict your answer, maybe ask yourself why not, or try to come up with a different prediction now than even the right answer choice if you can. So here I'm going to say that we're trying to weaken this conclusion that it follows that the monument was built long before. So if I'm weakening that, I'm trying to say that the monument was not built long before. my predictions let's say my prediction was that new evidence came to light, new evidence came to light that the organic matter is actually only 100 years old. So let's say that this was my prediction. I want to think about it. Was this a good prediction? Would this have worked? Could I have come up with a better prediction? So here, this is actually not a good prediction because on the LSAT, we want to, all of the premises are true. So if it says that the Andean monument was found to be over 1,000 years old, that's a fact and we have to presume it is true. And so trying to go against one of the premises of a fact like that isn't going to be the best support. So that would not have been a good prediction, but we really want to work on making those predictions in our argument. All right, so then for question 8, it says, why was the correct answer right? So before I use external resources, I'm going to come back here and I know that the correct answer is B. And so I'm going to explain why this is right. So the reuse of ancient trim stones was common in the Andes both before and after 1492. So why would this weaken our conclusion that it follows that the monument was built long before? And so my answer here is going to be like, so essentially they're saying that since it was common to reuse trim stone, the stone that was used to build the A monument could have been trimmed down long before the stone was actually used to build the monument. And that would weaken it. So I figured out for myself why that works. If I'm really struggling to see why the answer was correct, at the end, you go use external resources or watch one of my videos for sure. All right, and then the next question is, why was your answer wrong? And this, some people, what they do is they do just the answer that they selected. If you got it right 2 times, you wanna make sure that you do both of them. If you flagged a question and you even got it right, you wanna go to the one that you flagged and that you were like debating between and make sure you know why those answer choices were wrong. Some people will actually go through and do every single question or every single wrong answer choice, or at least in their head, make sure they know it. So let's say that I said D for this, that the earliest written reference to the Andean monument dates from 1778. So that's saying that, like, hey, the first time that we have anything written about this thing was in 1778. So why I'm thinking like, why could that be wrong? Well, it's because just because something is not written about until 1778, that doesn't mean that the monument wasn't built like thousands and thousands of years ago. Like it could have been built and nobody wrote about it. Like maybe nobody knew how to write, or nobody knew how to read, or nobody knew where it was. And so I'm going to write that down. Or if C was my answer, the Andean monument bears a striking resemblance to monuments that were built in ancient time. Well, I would be like, oh man, maybe I thought this. I that would actually maybe like strengthen it. Like it was built a long time ago because it's similar. Or just because something resembles it, like maybe I could build something that resembles a monument today that resembles something from ancient time. That has nothing to do with whether or not the monument was built before the Americans arrived or Europeans arrived to America in 1492. All right, and then lastly, just what made this question difficult? Some common things that make a question difficult for people are maybe not understanding the stimulus, maybe you didn't understand the question type, maybe a lot of people may have a misread, maybe the answer choices were hard to decipher between, maybe you didn't find the flaw, maybe you struggled to predict it, maybe there was a word that you just didn't understand what it meant and it really threw you off, maybe you were debating between two and you couldn't think about how you could decide between the other ones. We just want to make note of what those common trends are here. And then once you do that, the last thing is you can then review the questions that you missed and that you flagged with external sources, whether those are my videos, LSAT hacks, LSAT demon, and make sure that you really know why the correct answers were right and the wrong answers were wrong. and that you found the right conclusion, etc. And if you want to come in and fill this out more, you can. Some people, or if you just really, really, really struggle to answer this, then you can go watch an external video and then come back and make sure that you can fill this out for yourself then. And you want to do this for every question. I know it's a ton of work, but this is really going to make sure that you have complete understanding of the questions that you're doing for logical reasoning. And hopefully it'll help you whenever you feel like you're constantly narrowing it down to 2 and always picking the right one. Hopefully this will help eliminate some of that widespread in your score. Hope it helps.